All right. Well, you've probably noticed that this time of the year, we tend to talk about the Christmas chaos. You know the Christmas chaos. It's the long lines. It's the parking lot. It's the Amazon delays. It's the missing gift receipt. It's that family group text that won't stop dinging. Or it's that person in the family group text who sends that really long text that probably should have been an email. We call that Christmas chaos. But the first Christmas, it had no Christmas. There was no lights. There was no tree. There was no Christmas jammies. There was no peppermint anything. It wasn't Christmas chaos. It was real life chaos. You see, Mary wasn't like getting into like festive photos. No one was telling Mary, hey, let's get one of the baby bump. No, Mary, she wasn't posing. She was just trying to survive. It wasn't Christmas chaos. It was real life chaos. We pick up the story in Luke. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. So we read that and we think it might be kind of harmless until you kind of put yourself into the first century context. A census meant one thing and one thing only. We want your taxes. And so everybody had to go back to where their great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa was from and go there to be counted. So this may not seem like a big deal, but you got to imagine everyone traveling all at the same time. Think Thanksgiving traffic, except sandals and livestock. No hotels. If that doesn't feel like chaos, think Spirit Airlines. Okay, I mean, this is like total chaos. Just picture Joseph saying, so, babe, good news. I found us a place. Bad news, you're gonna have to lower your expectations. I mean, it was total chaos, really. It was like political chaos, it was cultural disruption, national frustration, and in that moment, a baby is born. Not just any baby, the king. The king that the majority of the world wasn't even looking for. And nobody even knew that he had arrived. In the middle of chaos, born is the king. But not just any king. This king would be different. He would call all of those who would follow him to live with a different set of values. Because his kingdom would be different than any other kingdom. In fact, he would call those who would say, I'm going to follow you, to live completely different than the world. That they would pray and love their enemies. That they would forgive those who had hurt them or who wronged them. That they would be generous with their possessions. And his kingship was lost on them and sometimes on us. Nobody at that time was really fully expecting what was going to be happening in that moment. His kingship was lost on them, and sometimes that can happen with us. You see, everybody noticed Caesar, everybody noticed the census, everybody noticed the chaos, but they didn't notice the king. And if we're honest, the same can happen to us, because during this time of the year, man, there is a lot going on. There's a lot that can distract us. There's a lot that can feel really important to us. And if we're not careful, we'll miss the very special presence of the king right in front of us. We'll miss his authority, and we'll miss his voice in the noise of everything going on. But his king and his kingship was not lost on Mary and Joseph. Back to Luke. But the angel said to her, do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. When the angel tells Mary, don't be afraid, this is because she was afraid, all right? And she had good reason to be afraid. This was not a Hallmark movie moment, okay? Not at all. Do we have any Hallmark movie fans here? Okay. Those of you that have your hand raised, you are like the salt and light of the earth kind of people. Because there's no one else on the planet that can watch a movie in like 1 minute and know how the movie is going to end and still give a round of applause like there was a plot twist at the end. You guys are special people. This was not one of those Hallmark movie moments. The angel said, don't be afraid, which is kind of what sometimes people say when you have every reason to be afraid, right? I mean, just imagine you're walking through your kitchen and all of a sudden, like, boom, right in front of you, there's this glowing, floating figure. It says, don't freak out. I'm freaking out, okay? And every time in Scripture where we see someone have an encounter with God or one of his angels, there is the same response. Fear. Heart-pounding fear. And Mary is told, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, even though Abraham, Moses, Joshua, the shepherds, Peter and Paul, they all were terrified. But Mary, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid at all. It's kind of like, come on, we got to be fair to Mary. And then the angel goes on to say, and you will conceive. And Mary's probably thinking, what? You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. And Mary's thinking, I'm not supposed to be afraid. So technically, she's not married yet. She's engaged. But in this culture, it's as good as being married, okay? So they're basically, in terms of what we're used to, this is like they're already married, except she's not having sexual relations with Joseph. And she's going to freak out. And she has every reason to freak out because as soon as she hears this news, she knows she's going to be publicly ridiculed. She'll never be looked at the same. Every time she walks down the street, people are going to stare at her and glare at her. They're going to insult her. She's going to break her mom's heart. Her dad is going to be furious. And the conversation she's going to have with Joseph, oh my gosh, it's going to be brutal. She's probably thinking, I'm going to be on the show 16 and pregnant. She's not thinking that. But she's probably 13 to 16 years old. And she's thinking, my life is over. This is it. And then she hears the name of her son, Jesus, which means Joshua or leader. And in some cases, it means warrior. And the angel goes on to say, and he will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Son of the Most High. This is royal language. This is a royal title. He will be the son of the supreme king. I imagine Mary is probably thinking, wow, that escalated fast. This isn't like, oh, you're going to have a really cute son. He's going to have like a solid GPA, great personality. No, you're going to give birth to the ultimate human being that has ever walked on the planet. And as if there was any doubt to his kingship, listen to this. The Lord will give him the throne of his father David, Israel's second king, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever, and his kingdom will never end. Mary's hearing the birth that she's going to have of this king. In other words, a ruler, a commander, a lawgiver, a judge. And you probably caught this. His kingdom will never end. He will always be king and he will always have a kingdom, which means Jesus is still king. His kingship is not seasonal. His kingship is not, oh, when he comes back, then he'll be king. No, it's right now. It's in this moment. It's in this world. Jesus is king. So his kingship was not lost on Mary and Joseph. But this begs a really important question for us, a question that we should consider every day. Is Jesus my king. Not do I believe in him, not do I admire him, but is he my king? Does he rule my life? Does his voice outweigh mine? Does his authority shape my decisions, my habits, and my relationships? It's easy for us a lot of times to say, yes, Jesus, you're my king, lead me, guide me. But if we're honest, we can have these moments to go, we want you to guide me and lead me. You are my king, but please, if we could avoid anything that you would maybe ask me to do that might involve changing my budget, my routine, or my preferences. But a king is not just acknowledged. A king is obeyed. A king gets first place. And so the question is not, is Jesus king? Our story's already settled that. The question is he my king? And you know, he was a different kind of king. Most kings ruled with force. They demanded obedience. They controlled people with fear, power, or threat. But this king, Jesus, he is entirely different. He doesn't storm into your life. He doesn't push you into submission. He doesn't force you to kneel. He doesn't demand loyalty at sword point. No, this king, he invites. He doesn't intrude. He knocks. He doesn't demand your obedience. He waits for your trust. And this king would have been born in secret if it wasn't for the Magi. We have to go to Matthew's account, the former tax collector, to pick up the rest of the story. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. So a couple things we need to point out. The first one we need to point out is King Herod, okay? So people back then would have known him as Herod the Great, and he was great, okay? He was very talented. He's the one that helped rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, and if Herod had an Instagram bio, it would read like this: King, builder, architect guy, legacy matters, don't test me, I'll unfollow you permanently. So Herod was very committed to making sure that his legacy and his dynasty would continue through his kids. He was committed to this. He was very preoccupied, you could say, with making sure that his children would be kings. This was a big deal for him. Now, the second thing we need to point out are the Magi. Now, the reality is we don't know a ton about them. We often assume that there was 3 because there was 3 gifts, but there could have been 10 for all we know. What we do know is that they're from the east, so some scholars speculate they're probably from Persia or around Persia, and they were the type of guys that would study the stars for divine revelation. It doesn't really matter that we don't know a ton about them, is because it's what they say next is what's really important. And they asked, where is the one who's been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him. They noticed something big had happened. Something huge had happened. In fact, this new star had risen. And how they knew it was the star for a Jewish king, I have no idea. But they go to the one place that makes the most sense. They go to Jerusalem and they say, where is this king? We saw his star. Where is he? We've come to worship him. And nobody knows what they are talking about. Nobody has a clue what they're talking about. But the word spread quickly. Look at verse 3. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. Herod was disturbed, and Matthew adds, and all of Jerusalem was disturbed. And for good reason. Because if there was a new king, that would mean there would be political division. There would probably be insurrection. There would probably be competition for Herod. There would be a threat to him and his legacy and his dynasty. And King Herod was no chill king. He was a man of action, and he was ruthless. So here's what he does next. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. So now we're seeing how he works. He's not waiting passively to see, well, let's just see if this new king rises to power. No, he calls all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law. He's gathering all the experts in the Jewish law, and he basically gets them together and he says, hey, you've heard the rumor. You've heard the news that there is this new king. Where was he born? Where was he born? But Matthew adds something here that's very fascinating. Matthew includes in his account that Herod calls him the Messiah. The Magi were coming, they were looking for a king, but Herod apparently calls him the Messiah. This is significant because Messiah was the title for God's final king. Messiah in Hebrew means the anointed one, and in Greek, the equivalent is Christ. Christ is not a nickname. It's not a name, it's his title. This is the title of God's final king. So let this sink in for a moment. Herod has gathered all the people's chief priests, all the teachers of the law, all the experts. He's gathered them all around. He says, I know you know about this king. I know it was prophesied. I know it was foretold long ago. I know he's the long-awaited one, and I've heard the rumors that he is now in our midst. Where was he born? He's not asking because he's asking with a sense of awe and wonder. No, he is asking because he wants to take action. He wants to do something about this. He's going to be proactive, and he's got a plan. Herod points out, this is fascinating, born is the king, the final king, and they don't even know his name. They have no idea who he is. The anointed one from God is in their midst, and they have no idea who he is or where he is. See, we know, because we know the story, and we know what this means, that Jesus is king. And Herod, and I think everyone in Jerusalem, knew the implications of this. Again, he's unlike any king the world would ever know. He has all authority, yet he's gentle. He speaks the truth, yet he brings grace. He holds all power, yet never forces himself on anyone. He doesn't crush your will, he changes your heart. He doesn't seize your life, he waits to be welcomed. He's sovereign, but not pushy. He's mighty and not manipulative. He's holy and not harsh. He's the king who serves. He's the king who sacrifices. The king who gives his life instead of taking yours. So what do we do with a king like that? The question is not, is he king? We've already settled that. We already know the answer to that. The question is, have I welcomed him as mine? Herod responded with fear. I think all of Jerusalem had that sense of fear, and yet the Magi responded with worship. The Magi responded very differently. Everyone had a reaction to this king because you can't meet a real king and stay neutral. And today, we're the same. We either resist his rule, ignore his rule, or welcome his rule. Everyone must make a choice. And so let me give some final thoughts here that I think will help this not just be like a cute story we remind ourselves during Advent, but actually has real implications for us today. And the first one is the crowns we hold on to. The crowns we hold on to are the parts of our lives that we protect and we polish because it makes us feel significant. It gives us a sense of purpose. It might help us feel like we're more important than we are. It's like our image, or it's our success, or it could be our gifts or our strengths, or it could simply be the thought that we are a good person. And they're the crowns that are hard for us to take off because it feels like if we took it off, we'd be giving away a part of our identity. You see, the invitation that Jesus gives every one of us is not to destroy your identity, but it's actually to give you a better one. Sometimes, if we're not careful, we can cling to these crowns when the reality is every single one of these crowns that we hold on to, they belong at Jesus' feet. What's that crown for you? The next one is the thrones we try to sit on. The thrones are places for ultimate authority. A throne is where decisions are made. It's a place where what is said is final. But the reality is, if we're being honest, we have a tendency to want to climb back onto the throne. We won't say like, oh, I'm king. We won't say that, but we quietly want to call the shots with our future, with our finances, and with our schedules. The fascinating thing about thrones is that they're designed only for one person. They're not designed for two. One leads and one follows. And so the question is, where in my life have I settled onto the throne and I call the shots? And finally, areas where we act like a king. These are the times in our life where we start to see the actions and the decisions that we have made. It's kind of proof to us that we still think we are the king in our tiny little kingdom. It's how we respond when things don't go our way. It's how we insist on our preferences, when we demand instead of ask, when we push people instead of serve them, when we protect our ego instead of confessing our sin, when we choose convenience over obedience, when we live like our time, our money, and our life belongs to us. And Jesus, his point is not to shame us. He actually wants to free us. It's not to punish you, but to free you. And so if I could suggest something for us, if it's the crown that you hold on to, can I suggest that you would surrender your identity? That you would just have a moment today where you say, God, this crown that I hold on to, this crown that I've been holding on to maybe for a long time, this crown deserves to be at your feet. If it's the throne you try to sit on, can I suggest that you would surrender your control? You know, the reality is our control is a hard thing to let go of. The throne is meant for one person. It's our job to follow him. Whatever he says goes. Surrender your control. Maybe it's the area that you try to act like a king, and so I would suggest that you surrender your daily life. Where in your life do you feel like, okay, Lord, this is the part I'm going to surrender to you? It's not to shame you, it's to bring you freedom. The reality is, the king came during all of the chaos. Nobody even recognized that a new king, the final king, God's long-awaited Messiah, the anointed one, many people, the majority of people, didn't even know he was there. We, of course, know. We know who he is. And we know that he is the king. And so we get the opportunity this Advent season to think through, is he my king in every area of my life? Heavenly Father, we're grateful. We're grateful for the fact that you sent your son in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the disruption, when everything felt like it was in shambles. You sent your son. And the reality is that story's true for us. That while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. As we think through this Advent season, how you are king, Lord, help us to be the kind of people that are thoughtful about all the different parts of our lives. The crowns we hold on to, the thrones we try to sit on, the areas in our lives where we still try to act like we're the king. Lord, may we come to realize more and more that as we surrender to you, as we surrender those parts, that you give us real life, abundant life, life overflowing. May we experience that in a profound way this Advent season. We're great. We pray this in the awesome and matchless and mighty name of the King Jesus. And everybody said,